February 12th, 1993. Rob Swinson is driving back from getting his girlfriend a Valentine's Day gift.
I never had to worry about them being impaired and driving. They just wouldn't do it.
He was traveling southbound on Markham Road. Night was falling, and he was headed home.
At 2 o'clock in the morning, when the police are knocking on your door, it's not going to be good news.
One moment. One hit. An entire family changed. Friday night, and it's a house party. Time to catch up with friends and relax. The drinks start to flow. Crack open a beer, followed up with fierce games of beer pong. Cups seem bottomless as the music keeps bumping long into the night. It's the kickoff to the weekend, and soon, drunk. The night gets hazy, heart rate slows, speech slurs, vision doubles. It happens every night. In 2009 alone, at least 1,074 people across Canada died from drunk driving. That number includes those who were driving drunk and those who weren't. Rob Swinson wasn't leaving a party that night in February. He was the one hit head-on by a drunk driver. His mother, Carolyn Swinson, was at home with her husband, Richard, and her daughter, Emma.
We were just sitting downstairs in the basement watching the television, and it was probably about 10:15 when a doorbell rang, and my husband went to answer it, and we just sat there, and Emma and I, we just couldn't understand why there was no sound, but we thought it must be Rob and his girlfriend. Eventually we decided we better find out what was happening. So when we got to the hallway and got to the top of the stairs, and we saw that it was a police officer that was standing in the doorway. I knew exactly why he was there. My husband did turn around and tell me that Rob had been killed and would never be coming home again, but I already knew that.
Rob was 27 years old and the eldest of 3. He was an avid sportsman, loved adventure. He could often be found on a motorbike or a skateboard. He even owned his own bike shop in the city.
That was something that he'd always wanted to do, and it was a really, really hard worker. And he would just, somebody that was always there. If his grandfather got into trouble and you phoned Rob, he would go and help.
Rob suffered massive trauma in the crash. His neck broke, and the impact of the crash forced his front seat to the back of the car. Police said there was no way he could have survived a crash that horrific. David Sterling was the handling officer of Rob's case. In the early days after the crash, Sterling tried to make sense of the tragedy for the Swinsons.
No one ever expects or wants to hear that they've lost a family member, and you really put yourself in their position. But as with any family, they had lots of questions, and some questions we weren't able to provide them answers right away, but over the course of time, I think, many of them we were able to answer.
Carolyn never questioned whether Rob was drunk that night, and the autopsy confirmed that there was no alcohol in Rob's system at the time of the crash. But it was a different story for the woman who took his life that February night. She was driving with 2.5 times the legal limit of blood alcohol content and had her license for only 10 days.
When I heard that I had my phone book and I'd taken it to the hospital with me because there were so many people we needed to call, and I remember smashing it into the wall, and Emma told me that she actually turned around and punched a police officer, and we were just so angry. And it's probably an anger that's probably driven me the many years to do what we have done.
The we in this case is Mothers Against Drunk Driving, also known as MAD. Carolyn first heard about the organization at the funeral home after Rob died. MAD is made up of volunteers across the country, and Carolyn has served as national president and national chair. They give drunk driving victims support and aim to make penalties stricter and more severe. But their main goal is to turn drunk driving into a thing of the past. Motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of death for 15 to 25-year-olds. Alcohol is involved in half of those crashes. Drunk driving is the #1 preventable death in Canada. That's a stat that MAD is determined to change.
A few years ago, they did a study and estimated, since organizations like MAD have been in place, that there probably about 25,000 lives have been saved during that time because of the fact that people were made more aware of drinking and driving. So that's been an enormous change, but there's still 4 people who are killed every day and about 190 people injured. So as long as that is still happening, then it just says, there are other things that need to be done.
Carolyn is tireless. On this Friday, she speaks at an injury prevention program at St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto. She puts on presentations in coordination with MAD at schools. She also speaks with past offenders after they are convicted, and she helps others that have lost a family member through victim support services. It gives them the chance to ask questions from a person who understands how they feel. And what better person to ask about losing a loved one than Carolyn? Rob was not the first person that Carolyn lost to a drunk driver. Carolyn's father was also killed by a drunk driver in England in 1981. It was almost 12 years to the day that Rob was killed.
My dad got hit by a drunk driver, and that was crazy, and it was so a miracle that he lived. And just hearing other people's stories, it was just this stuff is so real, and people need to take more awareness to it. That little moment changed your whole life in a flash. So it's crazy.
They don't understand what alcohol does to you. They don't understand how much is too much. So you need some education into the fact that just what does it mean to have a BAC level of the legal limit? How much does that? I just hope that by telling young people how hard it is to lose somebody, I hope that they'll just think twice about what they're doing.
So just how much is too much? The law says that a person cannot operate any vehicle if their blood alcohol content is over 80 milligrams. It doesn't take a lot to get there. The Center for Disease Control says it takes 5 drinks within 2 hours for men and only 4 drinks for women.
That's why, because Kelly took all her art. There was a guy in my old high school, nobody liked me. And so, this is when Facebook first came out. This is like
This is the spot where Rob Swinson died in 1993. Its closest intersection is Markham Road and McNichol Avenue, and a lot has changed since then. The road has expanded several lanes, and Police now have new ways of catching drunk drivers in the act. The RIDE program runs random spot checks to catch those impaired drivers. Now, that spot check can range from a simple conversation to asking the driver to leave the vehicle and to give a breath sample. RIDE first only existed in Etobicoke, but it's now province-wide and it runs all year long. This area is patrolled by 42 Division of Toronto Police, and Matt recognizes the work that they've done to keep the streets safe. Matt awards a plaque to the division that makes the most RIDE arrests. 42 Division won that distinction this past holiday season with 24 arrests.
It's great. You know that they do the job, but it's really great to have the opportunity to go and thank them personally for what they've done. And it's very important that they get the recognition for that.
What I have here today is that we have an opportunity to recognize the hard work that the men and women of 42 Division have done on a daily basis as they go out there to make the road safer for everyone.
So many times people do the job, but it's the people like the police officers here who go that a bit above and beyond and just really are very committed to what they do.
There was controversy surrounding RIDE this past winter. Some Twitter users around the city tweeted RIDE locations to help drivers escape the long arm of the law. But officers say the program is a small detour if even one life can be saved.
I understand that people are somewhat doing this as an effort to, I think, to avoid the RIDE spot checks so that they don't get inconvenienced. But if they understand that this inconvenience that we have when you get stopped and detained, it's a minor inconvenience for a major, major goal here, that we are trying to get those that are drinking and driving off our streets. If you tweet a RIDE location to someone, don't forget to apologize to the family if the drinking driver kills that family member.
Lives aren't the only thing at stake when drivers get behind the wheel impaired. There are a whole host of consequences for the driver that causes the crash. After the arrest, their Ontario license will be suspended for 30 days. The Ontario Ministry of Transportation estimates that it will cost the offender up to $20,000 to navigate the courts. And if they're still allowed to drive, insurance premiums will skyrocket. In Rob Swinson's case, the woman who killed him didn't serve a single day in prison. The first responding police officer at the crash site suspected that she was drunk. The breathalyzer sample taken at the scene proved that suspicion to be true. But the judge on the case believed that there were not enough grounds by the police officer to ask her for the sample. He believed her rights had been violated.
So in essence, the results were confirming what the actions that the officer did, but because the judge felt that the officer didn't have the grounds in the first place, we couldn't use the breath.
So it's almost a catch-22.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how frustrating is that, though?
It's very frustrating.
The impact of two cars colliding created a ripple effect. A family lost a son, a brother.
On the Sunday morning, we all had to go to the morgue and on Granville Street, and we all, the four of us, went there, and that was a really tough thing for Ian, who'd been living in San Francisco he'd been there for a while, to have to come and then go and identify his brother in a body bag at the morgue. And then coming out of then leaving the morgue, and the person at the front desk saying, "Have a nice day." Because they don't know any difference.
An officer carries the memory.
Generally, with most of my cases, you move on. Like when it comes to a conclusion or draws to a conclusion, you move on. With the Swinsons, it's been nice. It's been refreshing to have an ongoing relationship with them, because it helps keeps, I think, for them and probably me as well. It keeps Rob alive. It keeps his spirit alive. Like I said, I got to know him and I got to know of him through them as well as their friends, and he sounded like a awesome guy, and just that has lived on with me.
Carolyn carries Rob with her every single day.
That's a picture of Rob, and that goes with me everywhere. I don't take it off. It's with me. If I went out without it in the morning, I'd turn around and go back to get it.
At least once a week, Carolyn makes the trip across the city to Mount Pleasant Cemetery to spend time with her son.
It really makes me angry when I hear that there are still so many people who are killed every day and injured in impaired driving crashes. Impaired driving, it's not an accident, it's a crash, it's a collision. It is something that is totally preventable. And that's the thing that is so frustrating, is that impaired driving is something, people just have to make the right decision, and that's just, to me, such a simple thing. You know, it is a simple thing to do. If you're going out drinking, then just don't take your car. You know what you're doing, be responsible for your own actions. When I do talk about him and I go and talk to schools, it's important to get that message out about how hard it is to lose somebody. But it also gives me a chance to make sure he's not forgotten either. That we still, that he's still remembered. And that's usually what I tell the students. If you're ever tempted to drink and drive, then just stop and think about it.
People, they leave their house, they leave their work, and they expect to be getting home, and just through the selfishness of one person, they can impact so many people, whether it be just one family or that ripple effect of family, friends, co-workers. It's tragic that just to see how many people one person can touch when that person's life is taken away from them.
There's some people who say that that you can't move on with things if you're still angry, and that you have to deal with it. I'm still angry. I'm still angry. I'm angry at what happened. I'm angry that two people in my family have been killed because two people made really, really bad choices. That anger probably, for me, has done more good than harm, because it's probably the one thing that drives me to do something about it and make the changes. It doesn't affect the way I live, but if you ask me how I feel about what happened, about my dad and my son being killed, I'm angry, and I'm always going to be angry.
For the Ryerson Documentary Unit, I'm Adrian Cheung.